The snow crunched under our boots, like brittle bones. We slogged toward Aurora Station, a forsaken outpost buried in the endless white void of the Arctic. The wind howled relentlessly. It clawed at our thermal suits. It filled the air with a low, mournful wail that seemed to echo the desolation of this frozen wasteland. This wasn't a place for the faint-hearted. One misstep, and the ice could swallow you whole. But the station's sudden silence had yanked us from civilization, hundreds of miles away, into this icy hell. As the lead investigator, Craig, had been tasked with heading the team, Maria, our sharp-minded glaciologist with expertise in ice cores and polar anomalies, and Anthony, the no-nonsense technician who could fix anything from a satellite array to a busted heater. Aurora was built for long-haul environmental research, monitoring climate data in one of Earth's harshest corners. When their comms went dark, it could have been mundane. A power outage, a fried antenna, or even a wildlife encounter. We came prepared, loaded with supplies for days, ready for the worst. The station loomed ahead, its modular frame blending into the stark landscape. Solar panels catching weak gleams from the dim Arctic sun. Wind turbines creaking sluggishly against the gale. From the outside, it looked intact, functional. No distress beacons, no visible damage. But we all felt it. A subtle wrongness in the air, like the place was holding its breath. We breached the outer airlock. The hiss of pressurization cut through the wind's roar. Inside, everything was eerily pristine. Lights buzzed softly overhead. Heaters hummed at a comfortable warmth. The living quarters were immaculate. Bunks neatly made. Tools in their places. Even the pantry stocked with untouched rations. It was as if the crew had just popped out for a smoke. But the air carried a stale heaviness. A faint metallic tang that set my nerves on edge. Maria scanned the environmental controls. Anthony booted up the main console. I took the corridors, flashlight in hand, the beam cutting through the sterile glow. That's when we found them. The secure lab was sealed tight. The heavy steel door latched from the inside. It took Anthony a solid hour to slice through the locks with our plasma cutter, sparks flying like angry fireflies. When the door finally groaned open, the scene inside froze us in place. 4 researchers, the previous team, slumped against the walls, their bodies gaunt and withered, faces locked in expressions of raw terror, lab coats rumpled and stained, skin pale as the snow outside. Deep scratches marred the walls and door, frantic gouges that spoke of desperation. And there, scrawled on the inner door in smeared dried blood, "Don't let it in." Their hands were raw, fingernails torn and bloody, as if they'd clawed to keep something out, or perhaps to escape their own prison. The cause of death was obvious, even without a full autopsy: dehydration and starvation. Food stores were untouched, just outside the lab. Air recyclers functioning perfectly. They had barricaded themselves in and never come out. Maria whispered, her voice shaky despite her usual composure. They must have thought something was after them. I nodded, glancing back at the empty hallway. A chill crawling up my spine, unrelated to the cold. In the vast silence of isolation, the mind becomes its own predator, turning shadows into threats that devour from within. We spread out to investigate, each taking a section. I headed to the comms array. It looked operational, but it was inexplicably offline. Logs showed no errors, just a deliberate shutdown, as if someone had flipped the switch on purpose. The station's flawless condition clashed brutally with the horror in that lab. Every hinge was oiled, every surface wiped clean under the fluorescent hum. It was too perfect, almost staged, painting a mystery that gnawed at us. And then there was the feeling, an intangible weight in the air, making the hairs on my neck stand up. The wind outside seemed muffled, as if the station absorbed sound itself. The Arctic expanse beyond the walls was a blank slate of ice, ready to erase us if we faltered. But it wasn't the landscape that had me looking over my shoulder. It was the oppressive quiet inside, alive with unspoken dread. Our first hours were a frenzy, piecing together fragments from the previous team's work. Environmental sensors logged erratic readings, subtle rhythmic vibrations in the air, pulsing at odd intervals. Not seismic. The ground radar showed nothing. It was like the atmosphere itself throbbed with energy, fleeting and elusive. Every attempt to isolate it failed. The data vanished as quickly as it appeared. "This doesn't add up," Maria said. She hunched over a console, frustration etching her face. "It's like the equipment's toying with us." Anthony, our comms guy, suggested storm interference, but his voice lacked conviction. He had already noted faint static on the radio, hints of something more. As we dug deeper, we uncovered audio logs scattered across the system. Desperate recordings from the doomed team. The first few were routine, updates on ice samples, weather data. But they grew erratic. One entry, dated 2 weeks back, featured a trembling voice. "Heard knocking again last night. Dull thumps like a fist on hollow metal. Thought it was the wind. But it's inside now." Another, more frantic. "Whispers in the vents, calling names, laughing faintly." We can't trust the readings anymore. The final log was a garbled mess. A scientist sobbing. "It's in our heads. Don't let it in. We've sealed the lab." God help us. The recordings cut off abruptly, leaving only static. We played them back in the common area, the voices echoing off the walls like ghosts. Anthony paced, rubbing his temples. "Could be cabin fever. Arctic isolation does that." Maria shook her head, her glaciologist's instincts kicking in. "No. These vibrations match anomalies in the ice cores. Something's off with the site itself." I felt the weight of their words, the logs planting seeds of doubt. Fear is not born of the unknown alone, but of the stories we tell ourselves to fill the silence, weaving nightmares from mere echoes. The question lingered, cold as the frost outside. What had driven them to this? And was it still here, waiting? As night fell, or what passed for it in the polar dark, the station felt smaller, the walls closing in. We agreed to rotate watches, but sleep came fitfully, haunted by those recorded whispers. The polar night pressed in like a shroud, turning the hours into an endless blur. We delved deeper into Aurora's secrets. After uncovering the audio logs, sleep evaded us all. Maria paced the common area, her mind racing through possibilities. Perhaps subsurface ice shifts were causing the vibrations, or electromagnetic anomalies from the Aurora Borealis were interfering with equipment. Anthony tinkered with the comms array, muttering about fried circuits, while I reviewed the station's databanks, searching for patterns in the chaos. But the more we searched, the more the outpost felt like a trap. Its sterile corridors closing in, the air grew heavier, charged with an unseen energy that made every shadow twitch. It started subtly, that first night. A dull thump echoed from the far end of the hallway, low and resonant, like a fist pounding on hollow metal. We froze, flashlight slicing through the dim light. "Did you hear that?" Maria whispered, her voice tight. Anthony nodded, grabbing a wrench from his toolkit. We moved as a unit, hearts pounding, toward the source. But when we reached the spot, nothing. No marks on the walls, no signs of disturbance. Just the hum of the heaters and the distant wail of the wind outside. "Must be the structure settling," Anthony said, though his eyes darted nervously. I wasn't convinced. The thump came again later, closer this time, followed by a faint whisper, indistinct, like words murmured through a wall. By morning, if you could call the perpetual gloom that, we were on edge. Maria pulled up ice core samples from the previous team's work, her expertise shining through as she analyzed the data. "Look at this," she said, pointing to erratic spikes in the readings. "These vibrations aren't natural. They're rhythmic, almost patterned, like a signal from deep in the permafrost." Anthony, ever the skeptic, ran diagnostics on the sensors. Could be faulty gear. Arctic cold plays havoc with electronics. But as we debated, the whispers returned, clearer now, slithering through the vents. I swore I heard my name, a soft hiss that sent chills down my spine. Maria claimed it was calling hers too, while Anthony shook his head, denying it. In the frozen grip of the unknown, paranoia blooms like frost on glass, turning allies into suspects and silence into screams. We decided to explore the primary lab more thoroughly, the one where we had found the bodies. The room still reeked of death, a faint metallic odor lingering despite the air scrubbers. Maria examined the scratched walls, noting how the gouges aligned with glacial fracture patterns. Anthony and I rifled through storage compartments. That's when we found it, tucked behind a rack of equipment, in a sealed container etched with unfamiliar symbols, an egg-shaped object, about the size of a football, its surface rough and stone-like, in a mottled gray-brown hue. But what set it apart was the faint, pulsating light emanating from within, a subtle glow that throbbed like a heartbeat, casting eerie shadows on the walls. "What the hell is this?" Anthony muttered. Reaching out, I stopped him. "Careful. It might be what drove them mad." Maria leaned in, her glaciologist's curiosity piqued. "It looks like a geological sample. But that light, it's not bioluminescence. Could be some kind of mineral with piezoelectric properties, reacting to pressure or vibrations." We ran basic scans. No radiation, no heat signature. Just an inert mass that defied analysis. But when I touched it, a jolt shot through my fingers, and the room seemed to hum for a moment. The whispers intensified, now accompanied by more thumps, echoing like insistent knocks on the station's hull. Anthony described a faint voice in his head, urging him to seal the doors. Mariah admitted to hearing laughter, distant and mocking. Tensions escalated as the phenomena worsened. We gathered in the comms room to attempt contact with base camp. But the satellite link flickered and died. Static hissed with rhythmic pulses, pulses that matched the artifact's glow. "This feels deliberate," Anthony growled, slamming his fist on the console. "Like something's jamming us." Maria paced, her face pale. The audio logs mention this, whispers starting after they found an anomaly in the ice. What if this object is it? Some ancient relic unearthed from the permafrost? I felt the pull too, a growing urge to barricade ourselves in, just like the previous team. Arguments flared. Anthony wanted to destroy the thing. Maria insisted on studying it, and I tried to mediate. But doubt crept in. Were we imagining this? Or was the artifact manipulating us? That evening, the thumps grew relentless, pounding like fists on hollow metal. From all directions, walls, ceiling, floor. Whispers wove through them, murmuring warnings. "Don't let it in." Maria bolted awake from a nap, screaming about voices in her room. Anthony sat staring at his radio, convinced the static was speaking to him. "It's patterns," he said, eyes wild, telling us to stay inside. The sense of being watched became unbearable. The station's lights flickered, casting jagged shadows. We barricaded the main doors, logic screaming it was a mistake, but fear overriding it. The true horror of isolation lies not in the void outside, but in the echoes within, where the mind crafts monsters from its own fragile threads. By the third day, exhaustion clawed at us. Every step felt heavy, headaches pounding in sync with the artifact's pulse. Maria slumped in a chair, whispering, "I can't think straight. It's draining me." Anthony agreed, his energy sapped. I knew the object was involved, its glow erratic now, as if feeding on our fear. The thumps shook the station, whispers turning to urgent pleas. We were unraveling, just like the logs described. Paranoia fracturing our team, the artifact's influence turning the outpost into a psychological cage. The fourth day bled into night without sunrise. Aurora Station felt less like a building than a lung, expanding and contracting to the tempo of the egg-shaped relic's pulse. We spoke in whispers now, as if the walls might overhear. Anthony had barricaded the main corridor with storage crates, muttering that the knocking was testing our defenses. Maria hovered near the lab, notebook shaking in her hands, sketching fractal patterns she swore were etched into the relic's surface. I paced between them, mind fraying at the seams, trying to remember the sound of silence. The thumps became coordinated, traveling the length of the station in measured beats, as if something immense circled us, striking metal with deliberate fists. Between each blow seeped sibilant voices, threading through air vents. "Craig, stay inside. Maria, don't open. Anthony, seal the hatch." The words were so clear, I tasted them. Terror is most efficient when it teaches you to police yourself. Once fear writes the rules, the jailer can remain unseen. Anthony snapped first. He staggered into the common room, eyes ringed by sleepless shadows, clutching the relic in gloved hands. "We end this now," he rasped. "Smash it." Toss the shards outside. The stone's faint glow strobed faster, as if sensing his intent. Maria stepped between us. It could be emitting infrasound, Destroying it might release a burst that kills us instantly. I tried to calm them, but another thunderous knock rattled the ducts overhead. The lights flickered, plunging us into a moment of blackness. When illumination returned, Anthony was sprinting toward the airlock, relic tucked like a live grenade. I chased him. Frost crept along the sealed viewport, the Arctic night beyond a swirling maelstrom. Anthony pounded the control pad. "Open, damn you!" he screamed. Maria arrived, voice cracking. "If it's in our heads, that wind won't kill the voices." "You will." I grabbed Anthony's arm. Static arced between the glove and the relic, jolting us apart. The station answered with a chorus of knocks so violent. Dust fell from ceiling panels. Sirens triggered. An automated voice repeating, "Hull integrity compromised. Evacuate immediately." I knew it was a lie. Sensors were clean, but our minds weren't. We wrestled Anthony back, the relic clattering to the floor, its glow dimmed, as if sulking. He collapsed, sobbing. "It wants us to die like them," he whispered. We dragged him to the med bay, sedated him with half a vial meant for polar bear maulings. Maria's hands trembled as she set the syringe down. "Craig, we can't keep fighting our own brains. We either break the loop or share the same fate as the last crew." I remembered the coffee mug from days ago, still untouched, liquid unruffled despite the station's supposed tremors. The realization struck again. The sounds carried no physical consequence. They were illusions, perfect but intangible. I steadied Maria's shoulders. The knocks aren't shaking anything except us. The whispering stops the moment we accept it's a trick. The relic pulsed, as though disdainful of my epiphany. We formulated a desperate plan. I would open every hatch and door, flooding Aurora with the real Arctic chill. If the phenomena were in our heads, reality's bite might sever their grip. Maria armed herself with a flare gun, our meager defense against a nightmare that probably didn't exist. Anthony, half conscious, mumbled protests from the gurney, but couldn't rise. I reached the central control panel. My finger hovered over the override. A final whisper slithered through the PA. "Don't let it in." I exhaled, not listening. The klaxon wailed as I disengaged the safety interlocks. Doors hissed, bulkheads slid apart. A blade of sub-zero air sliced through the corridor. Instantly, the knocks ceased. No shudder, no collapsing beams, only the authentic roar of polar wind, and the flutter of loose papers launching down the hall. The relic's glow faded to a lifeless gray, as if its battery had been ripped out. Maria fired the flare into the open vestibule, the red glare painting the snow-blasted darkness. Nothing answered. No shadows. No beasts. Just the infinite, indifferent night. She let out a broken laugh that turned to tears. "It was never outside," she choked. "It was always in here." We wrapped the relic in a thermal blanket, secured it in a sample case, and trekked 50 meters from the station, burying it beneath a mound of snow, hard as concrete. The wind howled, but felt almost friendly now, its bite honest. Back inside, the silence was profound, a sacred absence. Anthony awoke hours later, memories fuzzy. When we told him the knocking had stopped, he pressed a palm to the wall, as though seeking phantom vibrations. They never came. Sometimes survival is less about defeating the monster and more about refusing to narrate its script. Terror starves when its audience walks out. 2 days crawled by without incident until a rescue chopper thundered overhead, its rotor wash scattering our burial mound. We didn't tell the evac team about the relic. We claimed structural hallucinations from carbon dioxide buildup. Paperwork would bury the truth deeper than the snow ever could. The flight back felt unreal, the white expanse below stretching like a blank page, waiting for fresh mistakes. Weeks later, the three of us attended mandatory debriefs. Anthony resigned, disappearing into the Canadian interior. Mariah transferred to a coastal lab, vowing never to set foot on polar ice again. I stayed with the program, researching psychogenic Arctic events. Some nights, data scrolling before me, I catch a phantom thud in the heating duct, then remind myself the mug on my desk is perfectly still. We never discovered what the relic truly was. Artifact of an ancient culture, meteorite imbued with cosmic resonance, or just an oddly shaped stone that amplified fear. Its glow may have died, but in my dreams, it still pulses beneath the snow, waiting for another mind to thaw it. And every dawn, before booting another workstation, I murmur the message scratched in dried blood on Aurora's lab door. Part warning, part prayer. Don't let it in.